Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I am your host, Keith Crockford, and today I am back with another exciting adventure where I'm going to be chatting with Marta Mistal. Hello, Marta. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. And I'm really excited about today's podcast because it really does float my boat. And we are going to be talking about the mountains and Marta's dream to do the 7 summits. And we're going to find out how far through those she is during the episode. But Marta, you currently reside in the UK, but obviously you were not born in the UK. Do you want to tell us where it all started for you?
Yes, so I was born and raised in Poland. I moved to the UK 20 years ago, so now I've been living in the UK more than in Poland, and this does feel like a home for me. But of course, my roots are back in Poland. The whole adventure really started there. I was very active as a child with my dad, taking us to little mountains, little Polish mountains, and camping and things like that. So I've always had this adventurous spirit in me. But the real adventure started when I moved to the UK. I started traveling a lot, and I was like box ticking all the countries. But that became kind of boring after, when you tick 50 countries or so, you just kind of want a little bit more than just ticking another box. So I started going for adventures, and about maybe 13 years ago, I went for Inca Trail in Peru. It was my first sort of camping abroad, and, beautiful scenery, 4 days camping. And then at the end, you see the Machu Picchu, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world. And I absolutely loved that adventure. And that was my also first experience with altitude, because at some point you reach 4,200 meters, which is quite high, and you can already feel it. You start losing breath, and I was so curious to go to see what it's like to go even higher. So after that, I was really keen to go for Kilimanjaro, which is what I did, and then after that, it was just wanting more and more, and I got addicted to it.
So do you think then it was the Inca Trail trip that really spiked it, or was it once you got to Kilimanjaro that then, like, the mountains really, started calling you?
I think it started with Inca Trail, because my style of traveling changed after Inca Trail, because before it was like going to see another city or another country, sightseeing, whereas after Inca Trail it was all about the nature. So I think Inca Trail has definitely changed that, but it was never for me about just being sort of hungry for mountains. I was always taking the one mountain at a time, and I was never aiming for 7 summits for a long time. So for me, it was always one challenge at the time. So Kilimanjaro was a big challenge at the time. Then I finished that. Then there was another one. So I never allowed myself to think ahead. So yeah, it just became addictive. But every time I summited and I was proud of this sense, I had this sense of achievement, and I just wanted more. And that made me carry on until eventually there was time for Everest. And obviously, now that's my kind of life, that I just constantly going on those little adventures. Well, little, they're not so little, but.
And so you've already managed to complete 4 of the 7 summits. Do you just want to let people know which 4 you've ticked off already? Obviously, you've already mentioned Kilimanjaro.
7.
Sorry,
So
you've
I've
done the
done
7.
7. So I've done
Right.
7 Bass version. So there's 2 definitions of 7 summits. One is Bass, one is Mesna. So obviously the main one is Mesna, but the difference between Bass and the other one is the highest one in sort of Australia or Australasia. Australasia, is that what it's called? Oceania, I think they call it. Sorry. So basically, the highest mountain in Australia is very easy, and so mountaineers don't want to count that one as one of the 7. Instead, they count Australia and surrounding islands, which includes Indonesia, because technically Indonesia is like on the same tectonic plate. I'm not going to go into the geography here, but technically, Indonesia counts as that same continent as Australia, and for that reason, the highest one in that continent would be the highest one in Indonesia, and that's way more difficult. It's very technical. It's called Carsten's Pyramid, but the reason why people started switching from this version to just the highest one in Australia is because for many years Carsten's Pyramid was closed. It was closed because of there was some rebels. It was a very, very dangerous place, and it was shut completely. No one was able to climb it for many years. They opened it last year, so I considered going, but I didn't want to be the first to go because I think 2019 they were supposed to open as well, and I know someone who was going for it, and they literally jumped on the helicopter to go for the base camp, and as they were in the helicopter, someone from authorities came, sorry, you're actually not going. And all the preparation, all the money, it's a very expensive mountain as well, it's gone basically. So I didn't want to be the first one to go, but it seems like people are now going, so I need to go back and do that one. Otherwise, I have completed the 7th summit, but Bass version, so the highest one in Australia, which is Kosciuszko, rather than Carsten's Pyramid.
Okay, perfect. So which of them stood out for you most of all? Which was like the one that really like took you by surprise
Well, I mean, Everest is definitely the main one and the most interesting. I wouldn't say it took me by surprise because obviously I knew how hard it's gonna be, and I knew how much damage to my body it's gonna make. So it wasn't surprising, I would say, but it's definitely one that stands out. And then the second one, I would say it's the highest one in Antarctica, which is Vinson. I absolutely love Vinson because of its location. So it's not about being the most beautiful. It's just because being in Antarctica is such an incredible experience. Just landing there, it's already enough. Like I remember when I landed in Antarctica, I thought even if I don't summit, I don't care. This experience is so incredible being there that I just don't care whether I'm going to make it or not. If I make it to the top, it's going to be a bonus, but I'm okay if I don't.
and when you did Everest, which side did you do Everest from?
So I originally wanted to climb Everest from the north, so from Tibetan side. But unfortunately, that was during COVID times. I was preparing for the north. I was going with one company. But when COVID started, China has closed the borders. So no one was able to travel to China. And so we weren't able to go from the north. So we had to literally 3 weeks before going, we had to switch to south. I wasn't really happy about this because I didn't want to go through Kumbu Icefall because Kumbu Icefall is incredibly dangerous. And on the north, you don't have Kumbu Icefall. The north has its own sort of difficulties, but there is no sort of as many objective dangers as on the south. However, the south is more fun because, Kumbu Icefall is so beautiful, but it's, at the same time, it's so dangerous. But anyway, so we did switch to the south, and I went from the police side. Yeah.
And in terms of which of them have you found the hardest?
Everest by mile. However, so Everest overall, of course, it was the hardest. It took me the longest to recover after that. It was incredibly difficult. However, the summit push, I found the summit push of the highest one in North America, which is Denali or McKinley. I think they renamed it back to McKinley now. Um, the summit push of McKinley was harder for me than the summit push of Everest, and there's many factors, including obviously oxygen. But yes, I did find Denali more challenging than Everest. I was way more prepared on Everest. That also played a massive role. Not that I wasn't prepared for Denali, but I climbed Denali a few years earlier, so I was already kind of well prepared physically, and then I didn't have to start from zero, because like every mountain I climb, it was like a top up of my fitness rather than starting from zero. And then when Everest came, I trained for 14 months just for Everest. And then I actually didn't mention this, but I first time I went for Everest, I didn't summit because of COVID, we had to send a lot of people home. Well, it wasn't just COVID; it was mix of COVID and some accidents, and we had to send Sherpas, guides, and climbers. We had to send them home, and having this much smaller group, not being prepared, we just couldn't continue. So right before the summit push, we decided to pull out. It was like a very heartbreaking decision, because it was like, oh, are we going? Yes, and maybe not. And yes, we're going. Yes, we're not. It was like literally a swing of decision. Within 2 hours, it was heartbreaking. But we made a decision that we don't want to go because it's not right, and we didn't. And then a year later, I went back and I summited with a different group. So the second time, I didn't have that much time to train, so I only trained for 3 months. However, again, it's not like I started from zero. So obviously I trained for 14 months for 1 year, and then I didn't train. Well, I'd still maintain my fitness, but I didn't like kill myself to train. And then the last 3 months, I just had to push myself quite a lot. So I was definitely far more fit than I was on Denali. So that definitely played a role. And then you have the oxygen and there's adrenaline and all that. And it made my summit push on Everest easier than the summit push on Denali.
And in terms of, like, I always say to people about, when you're mountaineering, there it's a percentage of, there's a physical percentage and there is a mental percentage for you to get to the top of a mountain. Like, what is your thought process on that?
Oh, 100% mental. Physical has hardly, don't get me wrong, you have to be the fittest you've ever been in your life, but you don't have to be fitter than 5 other people. You just have to be fitter than you've ever been in your life, because to get to that state, it means you have to go through hell before that. And that trains you mentally. And that means if you've gone through that before you even went for Everest, you've prepared yourself to be the fittest you've ever been. That means you had the discipline, motivation, everything. And it just made you so strong mentally as well, because you honestly have to go through that mental pain before. And if you have that, then on the mountains you're gonna make it, no matter how weak you are comparing to others. Obviously, I wouldn't maybe say it out loud, because you don't want to encourage weaker people, because at the end of the day, yes, weaker people can summit, but obviously there's more danger coming with that, because there's a difference going through convoys in 6 hours and 15 hours, right? Because then if you're going slower, you are exposed to the danger far more. You are more likely to die. So I wouldn't encourage the weaker people to go. However, even weaker people can go, because it's a mental struggle. It's not the physical struggle. It is obviously physical, it's very hard, but if you can push yourself, you will do it.
I'm interested to hear and obviously, Kilimanjaro, and, lots of our listeners, either have done Kilimanjaro, they aspire to do Kilimanjaro. Obviously Everest is at the other end of the spectrum. And obviously, again, people might aspire one day to 7 summits. But I'm just interested to know how you comparing Everest and Kilimanjaro in terms of, you did them at very different times within your mountaineering career. And I know how hard people find Kilimanjaro in that final summit push. But if you look back on it now, how do the two compare in terms of where you were on your journey?
It's an interesting question, because I actually went back to Kilimanjaro last year, but this time I led a group, and honestly, there's just no comparison. So when I went back, obviously, after Everest, let's be honest, I haven't really trained properly, so my fitness level dropped massively. But I went for Kilimanjaro without really training much, so it's not like I was super fit. I was just like a normal fit, let's just call it. And I found it. I mean, altitude hits you no matter what, no matter how much experience you have. So I was hit by altitude. I had a headache, a massive headache. I just felt so bad. I didn't have appetite. I had all the symptoms I had all those years ago, if not even more, to be honest. And it was terrible dealing with altitude. However, the physical push, I found it so easy. It's no, I'm not. It's really hard to say it, but like comparing to Everest, it's incredibly easy. And it's funny how I've come across people. We summited. We went back to a camp before going all the way down. So obviously everyone is tired. I'm tired as well. But there's a couple of people saying, I need a helicopter, I can't come back down. And they just go between the camp and the tent, like a communal tent for food, and they just go in between, and they just like go slowly, and they just keep saying, I need a helicopter, I can't come back down. And my thought, I obviously didn't say it, but my thought was like, you have no idea what it means to be tired. You can walk between those tents slowly, but you walk. You moan the whole time. That means you have so much energy in you still. After Everest, if someone gave me like a bottle of water and I had to open it, I had no power to open the water. I was completely exhausted. So when someone is tired and just tells me I'm exhausted, I'm like, you have no idea what it means to be exhausted. I'm just as tired as you are, 100%, but I've got a different perspective what it means to be tired, because this is just being tired. It's not being exhausted. You've got so much more in your tank than you think. And even not Everest, like even when you compare it to something like Aconcagua is so high that obviously the higher you are, the more tiring it is, because there's just a lack of oxygen. So I remember I was sort of almost like close to the summit, and I dropped my glove on the floor, and it was lying there next to my boots, and I just I was thinking, well, I have to pick it up. And I honestly stood there for a few minutes and I thought, how the hell am I going to pick this up? Because that's what means being tired. You know, if you go from one tent to the other, trying to organize a helicopter, you're not tired. I mean, you are tired, but you're not exhausted. You've got so much more. Like if you have that energy to talk and try to organize a helicopter to take you down, there's another level of being tired when you climb something like Everest. So I found it physically not really challenging comparing to many other days on Everest, many other days on other mountains, because it's not as the Everest is not just the summit push that's hard. There's like so many days when you acclimatize, they like so tough, and Kilimanjaro is nowhere near that, but the altitude, the way it affects you, it's hard. It's brutal.
But can you actually now look back to the first time you did Kilimanjaro and remember how you felt on there the first time you did it?
Yes.
Because I think the thing with anything is when you've gone higher or you've gone harder, then that seems easier. But you know, I see, I've taken hundreds of people up Kilimanjaro who have all said to me, like, that is the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. Obviously, that's because they haven't done anything harder. But Can you remember going back to that point when you had done the Inca Trail and the next step up was Kilimanjaro for you? Can you remember that still?
I do remember that. I was exhausted, and I remember this exact thought, thinking, oh my God, people actually climb Everest. I'm completely not created for that. And that mountain, Kilimanjaro, for me was like the peak of my abilities at the time. And I thought there's just absolutely no chance I could do anything harder. But then you summit, you come back down and you forget about this and you just kind of think, well, what if I just went for something just tiny bit harder? And then you realize that you can do it as well, because it's all about how you how you set your sort of thinking. If like it's a little bit like, for example, if you run a marathon, right, 42 kilometers, 26 miles, whatever. If I say run a marathon, let's say you do it, and then at the end I would say, well, you have to run another mile. You will have no energy, because that's you set your mind, you're gonna run 26, and then you're just literally counting down, and you can only run 26. You can't run 27 all of a sudden, because that's not how a brain works, because it's so mental that if you say to yourself, I'm going to run 26, you're only going to run 26. So I remember when I was going for Aconcagua, so the highest one in South America. It's kind of comparable to Kilimanjaro. It's very easy technically. It's a hike. It's a quite relatively safe mountain when it comes to like technicality. But obviously it's a little bit higher, right? So it's I would say it's like Kilimanjaro but higher, and then obviously you are more affected by altitude. So I very often compare the two. So I remember I was going to for the summit. There was 4 of us, and me and one guy. Oh, actually, there was 5 of us. Sorry, me and one other guy. We were kind of at the end. I was the only girl. I'm usually the only girl, so I'm like accepting the fact that I'm the weakest link. But I don't care. I still go, and there's so many times that I managed to climb a mountain, even though I was probably the weakest link. And there's like half of the people didn't even summit because they gave up, whereas I just kept on going. But anyways, I do remember going for Aconcagua, and when you look up, you see the summit, but it's not really the summit, because you get there and there's another little bit, and then you get there and there's another little bit. So you're obviously aware of this. So I see kind of the, almost like the end, but I know it's not the end. So I'm like ready for more. But then for some reason, and I will never understand why, but for some reason, my guide came up to me and he said, "Can you see that?" And I looked up and he said, "That's the summit." And it was so close that I started crying because I thought, that's it, I'm going to make it because it's so close. And I got to that, and there was another massive mountain, and I thought, that's it, I've lost it. He just completely changed my thinking. I don't know why he did that, but at that point, there's no chance I'm going to summit that, because my mind already was reset that this was the end, and it wasn't. And I asked him how much longer, and he said about 3 hours. And I thought, I can't believe he did that to me, because there's no chance I'm going to make another 3 hours. Like there's just no, I can't squeeze anything out of me anymore. But because
I always say to our local guides, like, how important that is, you know, how important being truthful is about what's left.
Yes,
Because, you know, people need to know the facts. You know, if it's going to be 2 hours, tell them it's 2 hours. Like, don't say it's just around the next corner and we'll be because it can, and that's what we were saying earlier, I think, about the whole mentality thing and being mentally strong in the mountains, because it pays so much more than the physical aspect. And you know, and I think, you know, I've done Kilimanjaro 16 times now. You know, I've probably been fitter earlier on when I was doing it, but I know what's around the next corner, and that's what gets me to the top.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Kenton Cool, climbed Everest, you know, more times than anybody else in the UK. How is he able to do that? He just knows what's coming. And you know, I had a friend of mine. She's done Kilimanjaro twice with me, and the first time she really struggled. And I've told this story on the podcast before. And then her sister said to her, "Oh, I want to do Kilimanjaro. You know, will you come and do it with me?" And she was like, "I'm never doing that again." But anyway, her sister convinced her to go and do it. And afterwards, she was just like, "Yeah, that was so much easier." And the only reason it was easier is I knew what to expect at every single point. Like, I knew that this little bit would be hard and then it would get easier again. And it is purely mental that gets you to the top of mountains.
I agree. Even things like, you know, a headache and lack of appetite. Yeah, I know I'm not gonna eat. I know I'm not gonna sleep well. And that anxiety is like so much lower, and that really helps to push yourself higher. So I completely agree with you. So if someone, you know, say to you, the summit is just there, and then you discover that's another 3 hours, it's honestly it's such a blow. Like, I honestly don't understand why he did that to me. But anyway, so I didn't think I'm gonna make it. The only reason why I continued going, because we only had one guide, and because it was 5 of us, I knew if I gave up, they all would have to go back with me, because I can't be left on the mountain on my own. So I just thought, I'm gonna continue walking behind them. Maybe they're gonna summit, come back, and then on the way back, they're just gonna grab me and we're gonna go down. So I continue walking. This other guy was quite slow as well, so we just continue walking. And I was just walking, literally. I wasn't going for the summit anymore. But luckily, those guys, they just kept on waiting for us, and we just kept on walking, and then they stayed literally 2 meters from the summit and waited for us. So I summited, but only because they were so lovely, waited for us. They could have summited and just start going down, and we could have just not summit, because that I was ready for it, because I had nothing in me anymore.
So now you've obviously, you know, there is still a potential 7th summit for you to go back and finish if you decide to go and do that one.
Yeah.
Are you done with 8,000 meter peaks now, or is there still some 8,000 meter peaks on the horizon for you?
No, so I really want to go for K2. I was going to go for K2 this year. However, I did not get time off work. I'm still negotiating time of work for next year. It's not guaranteed. So I kind of need to think what I want to do, because I'm getting older. I know I'm not super well. I know there are people that are older than me that summit, but at the end of the day, I know my body. I know how easy it is for me to train, how easy it was for me to train when I was 5 years younger and how it is now. And there's a big difference. And I don't know how much longer I can climb something like K2. So I really want to climb K2 next year. If I don't get time off, I don't know if I can climb it in 2 years. Not only that, my motivation is just dropping. It's not the same as it was 3 years ago when I climbed Everest, because the older you get, the more other things you are interested in, and that sort of interest sort of shifts. And also, going from not climbing any 8,000-meter peaks to Everest, it's a big accomplishment. But summiting Everest and going for K2, I feel like, to me, the sense of achievement is a little bit less, if that makes sense. So yeah, as of today, I definitely want to go for K2. If I don't make it next year because of the work commitment and things like that, then I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, work does get in the way of holidays, doesn't it? And I suppose it is still
100%.
kind of a holiday. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 months, if you are
yeah.
like in my industry, maximum we are allowed technically is 2 weeks. So to have 2 months off, it's not easy thing to do.
Alongside the 7 summits, you set yourself another goal, which was to climb the highest peak in every European country. Like,
Yeah.
how did the idea come about?
So when I was on Aconcagua, I met two guys. They were absolutely lovely, funny, and it's just the best two guys I've ever climbed with. They were a bit older than me, but they were just so entertaining, and they were climbing partners, and they've done that. They called it, I think, Euro 48 or something like that. Whereas I call it the Crown of Europe. And they told me about it, and I thought this is a brilliant idea. But one thing they did say is, they said that you have to do it with someone, because there is just so much to reminisce later, and you don't want to do it on your own. And I actually thought that's a great tip, and for that reason I came back and I started organizing group trips. And I created a little community that, all the people that I knew here and there, met in different parts of the world, they started joining me, and then they all became friends, and we started going on those group trips, and a lot of them came along for those European peaks. So yeah, I've done I think 32. I need to refresh my memory. 32 out of 50 countries, or 30 peaks out of 48 peaks, because a couple of peaks are shared between two countries.
Okay. Interesting. So you want to get that one finished before the end, and you've still got the motivation to get that one done.
Oh yeah, 100%, because I've done the hardest ones. So it's the rest is like quite easy. The only relatively hard one is Sweden, which I was gonna go actually this weekend, but it's just so in the middle of nowhere. You have to drive for like 6 hours from the nearest airport, so it's not really convenient to get to. So it's hard to get people on board, and I don't want to go on my own. So that's probably the biggest challenge I've got right now. But the rest is really like, it's a day hike.
Interesting. I'm gonna have a look at that challenge. That sounds super exciting to go and do. And like you say,
Oh, 100%.
you could probably do flying a few in a weekend and do some short weekend trips with that one and
Oh,
get them done.
yeah. Some of them, because when you think about this, you obviously have something like Mont Blanc, you have Elbrus, these are the harder one, Dufour-Spitze, whatever. You've got like maybe 5 or 6 challenging ones, but the rest, it will be like a day or 2 day hike, or even half a day hike. But then also you have things like Netherlands, with no mountains. You still go to this highest point. Or Lithuania. Lithuania doesn't have any mountains, so you have an excuse to go to every country in Europe and have a little adventure. So that's kind of a nice thing. And also, because there's such a big range of difficulty, you've got 48 mountains or peaks. So it's something for everyone. Obviously, if you're a mountaineer, then you don't really want to go through to like Lithuania, Latvia, because it's like, well, it's not a challenge. But if you like traveling, if you like weekends away, then it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, get on Skyscanner, find that cheap flight that weekend,
Yeah,
and go and get it done.
exactly.
I'm really interested in, people look at the seven summits, and for a lot of, Everest is becoming a bit of a rich man's game in terms of, those high mountains now, are, they're seriously expensive to go and do. What's your advice to people who want to go and do them, but are just kind of your normal everyday people?
Well, first of all, I would say don't expect everything's going to be given to you on a plate. Like if you are looking for sponsorships and things like that. And I noticed that's very often the case. Obviously, after summiting, I had so many people reaching out to me asking how I managed to get the money. Because obviously, I'm not rich. Yes, I have a relatively good job, but that's because I worked my ass off. I came to the UK without knowing English. I work in a pub. I don't come from a wealthy family. My mom was a cleaner when I was a little girl. My dad left when I was 3 years old, never really supported us. So I don't have the family money. And they live in Poland. Living in Poland it's much different than living in here. So it's harder to save money and things like that. So there's no way I can rely on my family. I had to rely on myself. And I noticed that every time I sort of explain what you can do to save money, a lot of the time I actually had people being angry at me as if I was lying, because they expect, oh, you're going to get a sponsorship with some outdoorsy company and they're going to pay for you. First of all, there's no such thing as a sponsorship like this. If you are maybe I don't know, Olympic athlete, they might pay for your trip, but otherwise, there is no such thing as sponsorship. There is such thing as collaboration, which means you have to do shitloads of, sorry for swearing, but you have to do loads of content for them before, after, and that takes forever. It's a basically additional job that you have, and another thing to remember is that if you want to climb something like Everest and you can't afford it, you're gonna have to adjust your life. Like I have adjusted my life. I'm 41 this year, and I've never lived on my own. And I do have a good job. Every single person in my workplace would have cars, nice houses. And I don't have that because my money goes somewhere else. After Everest, I bought my first car in my life because I couldn't, I could afford it, but I was like, I'm going to spend the money on the car, or I'm gonna put it somewhere else. I obviously live in London. It's a relatively glamorous place. Everyone wants to look good, and all the girls wearing makeup, hair, nails, and things like that. I went to a hairdresser after Everest, just treating myself, and it was my um, first hair, hairdresser visit in 23 years. And why didn't I go more often? Because I could afford it. But again, I'm gonna go to a hairdresser every 3 months. I don't know how often girls go, because I can imagine every 3 months they go. Or I could save that money and put it somewhere else. um Same with my house. I bought a house long time ago, with 100% mortgage, which means I had zero input into my house. I literally got somehow accepted. There was before the financial crisis, so you could get 100% mortgage, and I knew that means I am now responsible for making sure I have enough money every month to pay my mortgage. But eventually, obviously, I was able to rent a room, and I lived with some strangers in my house. I was never able to even sit on my own toilet in my house because there's some people I don't know living there sitting on the toilet, and I have to put up with that. And I'm 40 years old and I still do it. And that's because I have this hobby that is so expensive that either I'm going to live in this luxury, or not even a luxury, in a sort of standards of living that are sort of equivalent to my earnings, or I'm going to downgrade my standard of living but have extra money that I'm going to use on mountain climbing. And people very
Yeah.
often don't understand that. They think that they have their coffees and teas every day from Starbucks. I have it now after Everest. I changed my life a little bit. So I do have a car now, and I go to Costa. But before, I could never imagine myself going to Costa for a coffee for £4 or £5 and a sandwich. I would just all do that by myself, because I had this hobby that was so expensive, and I, it's either this or that.
Do you think that's one reason why your motivation might be changing a little bit towards the bigger mountains?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm getting older and I just want more sort of comfortable living more and more. So I'm completely aware of this. So if I push K2 by 5 years, I already know that I can't guarantee that I will want to go. Like, I know I want to go now, but in 5 years' time, knowing how I'm shifting, now I have a new hobby. I don't know if you're aware. I started wake surfing and I get obsessed with that. And having some other passion in your life, you start kind of thinking, well, will that desire to climb K2 stay? I don't think it will stay forever. I think it will just be, less and less. I will be less and less interested in this because number one is how much money it costs, and then obviously number two is how much risk I would have to take. But yeah, like, I still want to do it, and I kind of want to do it fast because of the physical abilities, and because the motivation, because I know I'm going to be less motivated, and it's going to be harder to summit.
Have you ever used pre-acclimatization in the UK before you've gone on any of your trips?
One of those masks, you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, or the altitude center in London.
Yeah. I have, yes, I have used that.
Would that speed up the K2 trip for you if you did it that way?
No, I would not. I would not go with that approach. I think I know people are going, and it proves to be relatively successful, but I do think that it's still so much risk that I wouldn't want to go this new route. Maybe in 5-10 years time, when it's proven to be okay for your body, then fair enough. But otherwise, I would probably prefer to go more traditional way, and maybe use it as an addition just so you are acclimatized better. But I wouldn't want to replace it by, there's now evidence of people summiting Everest in, like, I don't know, there's like 3 days reset? I don't know, what was it, 3-4 days?
Yeah,
I
London to
don't.
London.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I think I don't want to be the guinea pig. And fair enough, it worked for some people, but I just don't want to, I wouldn't want to test that, if that makes sense.
What's the one piece of kit that always makes its way into your bag on any trip?
Oh, interesting. Well, I've learned that I have to take a Kindle with me. It's not really that useful, but it's a mental sort of getaway from all the mountains and things like that. Because I never used to take my Kindle with me. I don't really even use it on a daily basis, only when I go up the mountain. But when I was climbing Denali, the highest one in North America, we got stuck for 9 days in one camp. And there was 3 of us in one little tent. And we were like sardines for 9 days, just laying there. I had nothing. They both had Kindle. and we were there. We couldn't move up, we couldn't move down. It was really bad because of the weather. We literally ran out of food. We had to dig someone else's food from the ground that they left because we had nothing to eat. So it was hard. So I've learned after that every time I go somewhere, I have to take a Kindle, because if I was getting crazy. Just imagine 9 days like a sardine laying there, and you can't do anything. Yeah. It was terrible. The guy next to me had a Kindle and I was trying to read his book, but I'm a slow reader, so it's not really helpful. The only thing I had was a game on my phone that was Guess the Country. So I'm like, well, after that, I know all the countries in the world, where they are, and the capital, because that's the only app I had that was like semi-entertaining. It was really hard. So yeah, I probably would say Kindle.
Amazing. If someone's listening and have got a big dream, whether it's climbing a mountain or something else entirely, what's the one best piece of advice you could give them to take that first step?
I would just say, just go for it. Don't wait for anyone. First of all, don't ever wait for anyone. If you want to do it, I want to do it with a friend. Kilimanjaro, I want to do it with my best friend. Don't ever wait for anyone. If you trying to go for like a little challenge and someone is going to fail you because, I don't know, they're going to come up with a million of excuses, you're not going to do what you want because you are dependent on the other person. Just think about, can I do it on my own? Obviously joining a group, but ask yourself a question: can I do it on my own? If the answer is yes, I can, then find a person to join you, but you will be ready to go by yourself and you're not going to have to wait for anyone. So I think that probably would be my number one advice. Just go for it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, we hear it so often where someone says, "Oh, I'm just waiting for my friend to confirm they can come,"
Yeah.
and then they never get round to booking it.
Yeah.
And I think it's always that thing that when you put your hand in the air and say, who wants to climb Kilimanjaro with me? All of a sudden, there's 10 people with their hand in the air, and by the time the due date comes, you're there on your own, or you've missed that opportunity entirely. So I think that's super, super great advice. Yeah. Marta, thanks ever so much for coming on to the podcast with us this week. I have thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you and learning about your journey. Where can people find out more about you?
So my main channel is Instagram. It's to live to travel. So TOLIVE travel. But I do also have a TikTok with similar content, not always the same, under the same name, and YouTube channel to live to travel as well. On YouTube, I have a little bit more, like a little bit different content.
Perfect. And then the final question that I always ask anybody new on the Bucket List podcast is, what is still on your bucket list? Now, I know you've probably answered that already with one of your challenges, but is there anything else that's still on your bucket list?
Well, K2 and the Crown of Europe. However, if I manage to get to K2, that would open the door for a new challenge for me, and that would be probably across the rest of my life. So it would be nice to climb the highest mountain in each country of the world. But that's only if I can make it to the top of K2, because obviously otherwise I can't do the highest in Pakistan.
Well, Marta, thank you ever so much for coming on. Hope everyone has enjoyed this episode and it has inspired you to get out and say yes to a few more challenges. That's it from this week's podcast. I will be back next week with another episode. But until then, thanks very much and goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.